In this video, I'll be counting down the top 10 most popular raids in Pokemon Go. Every one of these raid battles, for one reason or another, generate the most hype within the Pokemon Go community. It might be because these particular raids are super rare shinies, are among the best of the best, or just iconic. Regardless, these are the raids that are most often done in Pokemon Go. Alright, so let's start off with probably one of the most powerful and most useful Pokemon, and that is Giratina Origin Form. Now this legendary Pokemon is a very popular raid boss whenever it is out, most likely because most players want a 100% perfect IV of this Pokemon for the Master League, or because it has one of the coolest and rarest shiny forms in the game. Whenever Giratina Origin Form is out in raids, most communities will be out and about raiding as much as they can. Granted, the strong advantage you would have in the Master League cannot be overstated with this Pokemon. You are surely going to be able to find raid groups whenever Niantic releases this raid boss. Coming in at number 9 on this list is going to be Lickitung. Now this Pokemon may not be legendary or mythical, but for some reason it draws a lot of people to spend their raid passes whenever it is out. My guess is that it is because the shiny form of this Pokemon is super rare, and is often one of the most frequently used trade chips for lucky trades. It's not necessarily going to be a make or break Pokemon in any of the Go Battle League metas, but its evolved form Lickitung is a very solid Pokemon in the Ultra League and Master League. Speaking of rare shinies, this brings me to the number 8 Pokemon on this list, and it is going to be Deino. Now originally I had Gible taking this spot on this list, but ever since Deino's shiny form was introduced into Pokemon Go, and Gible getting a community day which drastically reduced the rarity of its shiny form, this Pokemon takes one of the top spots as being a super popular raid. Deino is, of course, one of the rarest wild spawns currently in the game, and you are likely not going to hatch them as the rate is super low. Until Deino gets itself a community day, more than likely you will find players burning through all of their raid passes, hoping to pick up a shiny of this Pokemon whenever it is out. On top of potentially picking up its shiny form, you could also get really high IVs and a ton of candy through raids. And since Deino's evolved form is a useful Dragon and Dark type, it is most certainly a high priority for players to go after this Pokemon. This leads me to the number 7 Pokemon on this list, and it is going to be Timburr. Now this little Pokemon evolves into one of the best fighting types currently in the game. Thus many players will go out and raid it en masse because of the need for candy. Timburr also doesn't spawn in the wild, making it almost a raid exclusive Pokemon. The only other method of getting Timburr is, of course, hatching 10-kilometer eggs. Also, Timburr has the potential to be shiny, which adds even more value to this Pokemon as a raid reward. Now coming in at number 6 is going to be none other than Snorlax. Similar to the last few Pokemon on this list, Snorlax is a highly valuable raid boss because of the rarity of its shiny form, how useful it is in the Go Battle League, as well as the difficulty of finding this Pokemon in the wild. Overall, this is one raid boss that most players will prioritize, mainly because getting a shiny Snorlax is quite an achievement. Alright, so for the next few Pokemon on this list, we are going to talk about raids that are very easy relative to the rewards and the Pokemon that they give. The first of these, and the 5th Pokemon on this list, is going to be Deoxys Attack Form. Now this mythical Pokemon has one of the most unique qualities of being a soloable 5-star raid. Sure, there are other 5-star raids that could potentially be defeated solo, but typically they require the absolute best conditions in order for that to be possible. In contrast, Deoxys Attack Form is a 5-star raid that could be soloed almost effortlessly. As long as you are at least level 40 with a decent number of high-level psychic counters, you will be able to defeat this boss easily. The crazy thing is that you still get the same amount of rare candies, golden raspberries, and Deoxys XL candies as other 5-star raids. And since Deoxys shares the same candy and XL candy across all of its different forms, you can farm up candies to power up other forms that are more useful in the Go Battle League, specifically the defense form, by farming up the attack form. Because of that, many players will burn through their raid passes in order to farm up this boss for those rewards. Now, Deoxys Attack Form is not the only 5-star raid boss that gives insanely good value for its lack of difficulty. This brings me to the fourth Pokemon on this list, and it is none other than Darkrai. I always find it interesting that a vast majority of players are constantly looking forward to this Pokemon returning to raids. Specifically, every Halloween season, if Darkrai for some reason is not coming back to raids, you will find a huge group of players upset about it. Darkrai is a very easy 5-star raid boss to defeat, requiring the bare minimum of trainers with plenty of counters readily available. This is one of those raid bosses that you can go into with the least amount of anxiety, but the rewards are substantial, given that Darkrai is one of the most powerful Dark-type Pokemon you can get in the game, and since most of the most relevant raid bosses are weak against Dark types, you will more than likely find a lot of use out of a maxed out high IV Darkrai. Most players seem to be aware of this, and thus, whenever Darkrai is in raid battles, there is a huge wave of players looking to farm this boss as much as possible, hoping for those perfect IVs and as much candy as they could muster to power it up. The other caveat with this raid boss is that Darkrai is a mythical, which means it is one of those few Pokemon you cannot trade for. Thus, for anyone who wants a good Darkrai, their only avenue for getting one will be through raids exclusively. This, on top of the fact that Darkrai does have a highly sought after shiny form, makes this Pokemon one of the most popular raid encounters in Pokemon GO. Now for the last remaining raid bosses, I'll be going over the Pokemon that are popular because of how useful they are for both the Go Battle League as well as with raids themselves. And coming in at number 3 on this list, it is going to be Dialga. I cannot overstate just how much of a high demand this Pokemon has whenever it is a raid boss. It just seems like everyone is looking for this particular Pokemon at any given moment. Needless to say, this Pokemon is a ridiculously popular raid boss, and several players are always looking to raid it whenever it is out. The likely reason is, of course, because Dialga is an absolute must-have Pokemon for the Go Battle League. Likewise, having a maxed out Dialga with XL candies will allow you to power through several raids that are weak against Dragon types. You don't want to forget the fact that Dialga also has a very unique looking shiny form as well, making it one of the most sought after legendary shinies currently in the game. However, I would argue that the next Pokemon on this list is even more sought after when it comes to its shiny form. Coming in at number 2, it is going to be none other than Rayquaza. Without question, shiny Rayquaza is one of the coolest and most iconic shinies in the game. The black aesthetic is just simply amazing, and many players will drain all of their Poke coins in hopes of picking up a shundo of this Pokemon from raids. On top of that, Rayquaza is one of the top damage dealing Pokemon in the game. Regardless of any type bonuses, Rayquaza deals an insane amount of neutral damage. Thus, players are always looking to get the best IVs they can when it comes to Rayquaza. Also, it is one of the easiest 5-star raid bosses in the game as well. Since Rayquaza is a flying and dragon type Pokemon, it has a double weakness to ice. This means that regardless if you already have a perfect IV Rayquaza, it is still a good boss to farm for those rare candies and other raid rewards, as it is super easy to defeat. Alright, so before we move on to our number 1 most popular raid boss in Pokemon Go, let's go over a few honorable mentions. The first of this is going to be none other than Kyogre. This water-type Pokemon is one of the strongest currently in the game, and many players will be looking for this Pokemon to bolster their Master League teams. Kyogre also has a very unique shiny form as well, which many players sees as a highly valuable trade chip. And the second honorable mention for many of the same reasons is actually going to be Kyogre's counterpart, and that is Groudon. Groudon is a very powerful ground-type Pokemon, and many players are always seeking to raid this Pokemon whenever it is out. There's plenty of Pokemon that can counter this raid boss, and overall it does have a really cool shiny form that a lot of players are looking for. Okay, so with those honorable mentions out of the way, let's finally move on to our number 1 most popular raid boss in Pokemon Go. And yes, you guessed it, it is going to be none other than Mewtwo. This legendary Pokemon is probably the most iconic legendary in the game. That alone could make it the most popular raid boss in the game, yet it is also one of the most versatile Pokemon to have for pretty much every aspect of Pokemon Go. Considering how useful it is, Mewtwo is without question the most rated raid boss throughout all of Pokemon GO's history. Whenever this legendary is in raid battles, there is typically a huge boost in player activity, and almost every player is looking for better and better IVs of this Pokemon. You can almost guarantee to find a high number of players raiding this Pokemon whenever it is out as a raid boss. Alright, so there you have it. These were the top 10 most popular raid bosses in Pokemon Go. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if it's your first time here. I am Count Jinsula. Be safe, have fun, love yourself, and I'll catch you all later.